The recent airing of Digimon Data Squad in America and the reruns of the older seasons has sparked an interest in the Digimon franchise once again. Inevitably, people have begun to compare seasons, arguing which one is the best. Frankly, this has become a fairly pointless debate, as Season 1 is almost universally regarded as the best of the franchise. Determining the second best season is actually more interesting. Before looking into this, I expected the general contenders for this ranking to be Seasons 2 and 3, but I have noticed that Season 3 is regarded as second best more and more. What really shocked me is that many now appear to consider Season 2, or Digimon 02, to be the worst of the franchise. Now, this puzzles me because that title really belongs to Season 4. Frankly, I could go on for days giving reasons why this season failed epically in almost every area that counts, but that's beyond the point. The primary reason I have decided to make this review is to properly evaluate Season 2 component by component, and maybe clarify a few abnormally common misconceptions. So let's begin. First of all, 02 has one of the most engaging plots of all 5 seasons, possessing a unique feel of continuity and closure that is absent from the other seasons. This is one of the few areas in which 02 actually improves upon Season 1, if only slightly. The pacing is actually very good, as the plot really begins immediately, and begins to develop around the 8th episode. Compare this to Seasons 3 and 5, where the plot takes half the season to actually kick in, and around the 2/3 to really develop. In earlier reviews, such as the one by Mr. Anime Reviews, it is claimed that the plot begins to fall apart after the Emperor arc. I strongly disagree with this, and it really puzzles me that anyone would draw this conclusion, as the Emperor arc is actually the weakest segment of 02. It is clear that most of the Emperor arc serves to reintroduce the old characters and give the audience an idea of how they have changed over the course of several years. In this anime, it is typical for the quality to increase as the season progresses, and 02 is no exception. The plot actually becomes more cohesive, and the quality of individual episodes increases after the Emperor arc. The overall tone of the season gradually becomes darker, and the character arcs of each character become apparent. Some complain that too many things happen at once near the end of the season, but anyone that takes the time to really pay attention would see that everything ultimately falls into place quite nicely, and had an overall purpose. For example, the attack of the Daemon Corps had the purpose of giving the main group an idea of the type of foe they would ultimately have to face, and the drastic measures they would have to take. It was also meant to emphasize the importance of the Dark Spore. Now, I know I'm going to have trouble defending the epilogue, so all I will suggest is that people see it for what it is. As far as I understand, this ending is unpopular due to the unsatisfactory conclusion of the lives of certain characters, but honestly, I think that it was necessary to get a glimpse of what would ultimately become of everyone's favorite characters. Another thing that seems to bother fans is the fact that every human on Earth ultimately receives their own Digimon partner, supposedly diminishing the uniqueness of the main characters. However, this is a hasty conclusion. Although all humans do obtain a partner, only the main groups from both seasons were chosen because only they could have defeated the current threats. Remember, during 02, there were characters with Digimon partners all over the Earth, but none of them were selected to save both worlds, so the special attributes of the main characters are preserved. A common criticism of this season, as far as I've seen, is that the new human characters are handled poorly. Again, a general misconception. Davis, the new leader, is often regarded as idiotic or just plain annoying. While it is true that Davis is portrayed as obnoxious and arrogant in the beginning, as the series progresses, he actually matures quite a lot, which gives him an actual character arc. For example, if it wasn't for his faith in Ken's redemption, it is probable that the rest of the group would have never accepted him, and Davis's perseverance near the end of the series actually saves the group from the final villain. Cody is often regarded as uninteresting, but his interactions with other characters actually provide for some of 02's better moments. His realistic issues become important to the story, since the death of his father relates to one of the villains, and his general need to live up to others' expectations sets off some key plot points, such as the focus on the Emperor's real identity and the discovery of some of Oikawa's backstory. Then there's Yoli. Now, I will be fair in admitting that if this season has one irritating character, it is her. Many of her actions, such as her outbursts and dramatic pointing, are just humiliating. However, I will also be fair in pointing out that even she has her moments. Although she does provide for some of Zero Two's most infamous scenes, she does serve her purpose, and her ingenuity does often prove useful, such as when she used sound mechanics to counter Aurukenimon's control over Digimon and Stingmon. Also, even Yoli eventually develops into one of Zero Two's more cautious characters, particularly before Ken joins the group. I really don't have to elaborate upon the character of Ken since he is highly regarded, and deservedly so at that. Despite what many have said, the characters of TK and Kari are handled adequately here. We get to properly see how the events of this first season shaped TK's overall view of the world around him, while Kari serves as somewhat of a voice of reason and inspiration during pivotal moments. Seeing the original characters every now and then is always a delight, and although some complain that they did not appear enough, it is actually logical that they would appear as frequently as they did. They all now have greater obligations that they must fulfill. Finally, the voice acting of the new characters, although only average at first, becomes impressive as the characters become more established. Something that really sticks out in this season is how well-rounded the villains are, definitely one of Zero Two's strongest attributes. First, of course, we have the Digimon Emperor, also known as Ken. This is a unique villain in that he is human, but also in that he provides the main group with the dilemma of fighting a human as opposed to a monster, an interesting plot point that would arise again. The Emperor is particularly effective because we actually get to see much of his backstory, which explains his motives quite clearly. Many of the threats he makes towards the heroes are quite cruel, such as forcing Davis to choose which of his friends would live, and his main schemes are memorable. The fact that he eventually becomes a hero gives his story of redemption a fully rounded feel. The next villains are Arukenimon and Mummymon. Now, these two have received criticism in recent years for some irrational reasons. First of all, some people have complained about the fact that they travel in a jeep. Is this unorthodox for a villain? Yes. Is it something to get nitpicky about? No. Frankly, these two are some of the most well-developed and endearing villains of any season in the franchise. Their interactions with each other are something that is typically not seen amongst Digimon villains, and provides for some of Zero Two's funnier moments. In addition, they are no slouches in combat, and the team actually has difficulty fighting them on more than one occasion. They also set off some important plot points, including the creation of Blackwell Greymon and unleashing of wild Digimon around the globe. Much of their dialogue is not bad either. Arukenimon's conversation with Ken is particularly good, as we get a slightly better idea of why Ken suddenly became the Digimon Emperor. Then we have Oikawa. This guy is an effective villain because his motives are not horrendously generic at all, and he actually turns out to be one of Zero Two's most sympathetic characters, which is quite an accomplishment for a villain. His backstory is nothing if not tragic, and his dialogue and voice acting are excellent. The revelation that he was actually manipulated by Myotismon is a good plot twist. Finally, there is Mallow Myotismon. To clarify something that is more confusing than it should be, yes, Mallow Myotismon is Myotismon's most powerful form, which should be obvious from his display in the final episodes. Mallow Myotismon is, from what I can see, the best final enemy of any season for a large number of reasons. It took 2 generations of Digidestin to finally defeat him, a unique aspect shared only with Diaboromon. He threatened the real world twice, came closer than any other villain to conquering it, had actually been manipulating the events of Zero Two from the start, and his overall scheme was far more elaborate than that of any other villain. Granted, Lucimon, the final villain of Season 4, had also been manipulating the events of his season, but his scheme was really nothing beyond gathering data, while Myotismon's plot involved exploitation, conquest, global-scale diversions, and more, which required real planning. Lucimon really cannot compare to the accomplishments of Myotismon. After all, he returned after being sealed away and did endure being destroyed once, but Myotismon returned after being destroyed twice, and in the real world at that, and came closer than Lucimon ever did to conquering the real world. To survive being reverted to an egg, like Lucimon did, is not very impressive. In addition, Mallow Myotismon demonstrates a sadistic personality, more so than any other villain, shown when he brutally destroys his own minions and tampers with the minds of the main group, and his motives of revenge, conquest, and overall enjoyment of others' pain are well conveyed. The fact that he endures a beating from a small army of chosen Digimon while weakened, and later beats them all down, is quite impressive. Admittedly, the fact that he was destroyed by the cutting of his power source was not entirely satisfying, but the fact that his data was terminated by Imperial Dramon is good enough. Also, the voice acting for all the villains of Zero Two is just plain phenomenal.